very happy to see all of you here. Thanks for coming. And I guess we'd just like to start by talking a bit about the ideas that, some of the ideas that made us start BooksActually. So we actually started this because of our love of books and literature, obviously. And I had just graduated from film school back in the past, and I had a very keen interest in the way human beings told stories. Growing up, I was encouraged by my mom to pick up reading. Every Sunday, we'd go to the National Library, and she'll pass me all of my family's subscription cards so that I can borrow about 16 books at a go, which was rather crazy for a young girl, but that started me off reading, and it didn't turn me off at all. And after that, I actually attended speech and drama lessons, and I was exposed to the world of poetry and literature by authors such as Ted Hughes and William Blake. And I also read books by Roald Dahl and Michael Rosen, which you might be familiar with as well. This was actually the same for Kenny. He grew up reading a lot as well. His mom actually bought encyclopedia subscriptions for him when he was a kid on every possible topic. So he grew up reading that as well as, like any other kid here, Enid Blyton's. And after his studies, Kenny actually went on to work at other bookstores like Tower Books and Borders. And that's how he picked up skills for book selling. And separately, both of us really love reading books. As with every book lover, we had a dream to one day set up a bookstore of our own. Surrounded by 2 cats and a fireplace. Right now, we actually have 2 cats and a bookstore, but not the fireplace, because that wouldn't be very practical in Singaporean terms. Okay. I guess I'll talk a bit about the other bookstores that have been around for some time. Bookstores like Tower Books, Kinokuniya, and Borders. When they first entered our shores in the early 90s, our local literature,
The range of the books.
Yeah, the range of the books. They actually exposed us to more selections than our local bookstores did. Local bookstores like MPH and Times, where we were only restricted to books such as John Grisham and Sidney Sheldon and Rice and stuff like that. But when the foreign bookstores entered our markets, they actually introduced us to foreign authors, European and American writers like Pablo Neruda, where we learned to play odes and poetry to common objects. And there was also Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath, most well known for her bell jar, and we also sort of found a friend in Holden Caulfield, the protagonist of Catch in the Rye, and from then on we also learned classics like Plato, Homer, Euclid, and Socrates, and we learned to pronounce Russian names like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and Solzhenitsyn. So the foreign bookstores actually expanded our horizons, and our literary appetites were stretched, kind of like rubber bands, and they would never go back to the way it was. So this was the time when we actually realized that there were many titles that fell through the gaps on the bookshelves that were not available at these bookstores. Like, for example, George Orwell, he's most well known for Animal Farm in 1984, but there were other books that he wrote which were equally good, if not better. Essays and novels such as Down and Out in Paris and London, Keep the Expedistra Flying, and Coming Up for Air. So these were the titles that were not popularly pushed in the bigger bookstores, but these were titles that we wanted to read, and we actively sourced for them as well. So this was our passion as readers. We wanted to excavate all these titles that fell into obscurity. So these were titles that were not actually tested in literature exams, but they had a message and a story as well. And we wanted to learn more. We discovered not just forgotten works by famous writers, but forgotten writers altogether. People like Austen Wright, who is a contemporary of J.R.R. Tolkien, Georges Perec, and Raymond Queneau of the Oulipo group. These were writers who experimented with language and writing styles. We wanted to share this whole universe of works with the people around us and other readers, and this was where we started to pinpoint our dream. We wanted to introduce readers to good literary works that were not represented by the bigger bookstores, and these were considered obscure to the local consciousness, but they should not be, because these are good works as well. And we wanted to make reading fun. We wanted to make reading accessible to everyone, and it's not an elitist subject that's limited to the privileged few, but something that everybody can enjoy. So what we did was we started to curate titles and authors that we love, and we brought in works in their repertoire that were unheard of. For example, Vladimir Nabokov, he's most well known for Lolita, but he also had a precursor to that, which was called The Enchanter. And I suppose nobody really knows about that because the bigger bookstores don't actually feature titles like that. But this is something that we want to bring across to readers as well. Because I feel like the more you read, the more you want to read more of, for example, something that you really love or your favorite author. Okay, then a lot of these titles that we brought in were actually from tiny publishers and small presses from around the world. And gradually, independent writers and artists also came to us. And slowly, we became the platform for young and emerging writers and artists to showcase their works. And we feel like we have a responsibility to contribute to the local scene because we are small and independent ourselves, and we understood the struggles of independent artists. And with whatever space we had, I can show you some pictures. This was our first store at Telok Ayer Street, where it was on the second floor of a shop house, and this was how it looked like in the past. So we actually had books placed along the walls, and the center space was flexible. So what we did was we used the center space as a sort of gallery and performance space for artists who wanted to showcase their art installations, or as a performance space where people could hold reading sessions, book launches, and we even had a monthly poetry session where we invited anyone. It was an open mic session, so anyone could come in and read their own works of poetry. We also did a play as well.
Yep. We did something that was experimental, I guess. I mean, we did do a dramatic reading of one of Eleanor Wong's play because one of our close friends, Rizal, he was back then a theatre student at NUS. So he wanted to have a space for the dramatic reading. And of course, we saw a new Eleanor by then. So we asked for permission to so-called stage that play again, in a sense. But the space was so small. It's really small where you could only feed maybe 20 to 25 audience members. And even with that amount of people, it's quite a stretch because you still got to put in the space for the performers to perform, in a sense. But we still did it. We did it for 3 nights. Since we could only accommodate 25 people, so it was sold out. It was very easy to sell out. It's not hard to sell out for 25 people. We liked what we did. Everybody enjoyed themselves, but we swear never do it again. Not for 3 nights at least in a row. But it was this space that allowed us that made us explore how we ran a bookstore. It's not just retail in that sense. You know, you put a book out there, you put a stationery out there, and you hope someone comes up and buy it. The fact that we're on the second level, we realized that the fact that we're on the second level, we got to drive traffic up. So we did, like Karen was saying, we did all exhibitions, we did all the poetry sessions, we did as much book launches as possible in a sense. And eventually it does help to let people get familiarized with the location. We are not located in the heart of Orchard Road in a sense, so it's a place that it's not so familiar if you are not familiar with the area. So you got to make the effort to actually want to go, and it was on the second level, so that made it all much more difficult. Yes. Then eventually we spent 2 years, 2 months, 2 years and 2 months over at Telok Ayer Street. Truth to be told, we have always wanted the bookstore to be located at this particular location called Ann Siang Street. Ann Siang Street is basically where most of the independent retail cluster is actually located at. Most of the retail outlets are all there for that cluster. So our initial plan was that we wanted BooksActually to be located there. Of course, the rent over there is very high. The fact that it's already established as an independent retail cluster. So when we first asked about the location, it was just so expensive, so we decided to take a walk down Telok Ayer Street. And of course, we found one on the second level that was manageable. The rent that we were paying back then for Telok Ayer was 1,600. So 1,600 was still quite a stretch. The fact that we have never done business before, we have never rented a space before, we decided to go into it, and that was back in late 2005. 2 years later, we got offered a chance. One of our fellow retailers over at Ann Siang Street, they were the front row fashion boutique. Their ground floor space, we should see this in the picture here, it was their cafe. So on the ground floor was a cafe, and then on the second and third level was their fashion boutique. And they reached a point where they decided that they didn't want to do the cafe anymore. They wanted to so-called lease out the space. And so, of course, they asked us because they heard that we were keen on moving in that sense. They asked, and of course, it all came down to how much the asking price was. And when they offered the amount, the rent amount, it's reasonable. It was within the market rate back then, because you're looking at 2007, right? That's when the market was actually recovering. They were asking for 7,000 a month. So it was a decision of 1,600 a month to make the jump to 7,000. So we're looking at almost 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. So as a natural reaction, we asked our friends, close friends, should we make the move? The fact that the rent is going to be 3 times. Sadly, all of them said no. Yeah, but Karen and I did the calculations. We tried to be as prudent as possible, try to be as objective as possible, because Ann Siang was the preferred location in the first place, and a location opened up was hard to come by to begin with. We calculated with the amount of sales that we had at Telok Ayer Street, the first location, it's just roughly enough to cover the rent at the new space if we were to take it up. But it also means that we have nothing left over if the sales was stagnant, as what we are drawing at Telok Ayer Street. We still decided to make the move. So, of course, we moved. And our calculations and our assumptions were proven correct in a sense where we actually heavily believe it's only when we were at Ann Siang Street that's where BooksActually grew. Without the Ann Siang Street outlet, BooksActually would have never grew at what it is now in that sense. The fact that it is a retail cluster, we do see a higher amount of customers, a higher amount of traffic. The demographic is definitely much more what the sort of demographics that we wanted. Of course, the area itself is also very heavily promoted by the Singapore Tourism Board, because it does combine part of the Greater Chinatown area. So over there, that's where a lot of things changed for us.
I suppose people are right when they say location, location, location. This was the location that actually brought us to greater heights, and we're really thankful for that.
Karen was saying location, location, location. It was an initial thought that I I had thought that location wouldn't matter that much. Like you go to the business school, they always tell you, location, location, location. But I thought otherwise. I thought that if we were to provide something really unique, something that's good, people will still travel, which they did at Telok Ayer, but just not enough numbers. So it was at Ann Siang that made a whole lot of difference for us in that sense. So we do believe in location. After Ann Siang, right around, it's almost at the end of the 2-year period, Ann Siang, which was again time for the lease to be renewed because it's usually a 2-year contract. Ann Siang straddles this other street called Club Street, so it's just side by side in a sense. We saw this unit at Club Street, 86 Club Street. It was actually empty. Some office went out, some spa went out. Can't remember what it was. But there was this huge signage outside with the agent's number. So I thought, well, why not? Give it a call. You never know, if it's going to be dirt cheap. So I called, and she said, the landlord is renting out all 3 levels, which was definitely bigger than the Ann Siang unit, for 9,000 a month. And I said, okay. So you mean it's negotiable at 8,000? That's how it usually work. If they say 10,000 means you can close the deal at 9,000. It's usually $1,000 off. In that sense. So I said, why don't we view the unit? Because books actually have always concentrated on fiction and literature. That's our strength in that sense. We know what we sell, we like what we sell, and our customers know what we are good at in a sense. But we don't just read literature in a sense. We read enough non-fiction to begin with. So we decided that we wanted to have a non-fiction store, which is what you see there, Polymath Crust. We called an agent, and eventually, of course, we managed to seal the deal with them. And we set up Polymath Crust, which was the non-fiction store that you see there. We had very ambitiously wanted 2 stores. In the span of 4 years, we wanted to have 2 stores. And you're looking at, we don't have any financial backing in that sense. To give a little bit better history, we started BooksActually with some of my savings and with a small loan from her mom. It came up, if you're looking at cash value, it came up to $40,000. So we started BooksActually $40,000, and that is very, 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 very small for any retail outlet in Singapore. So when we decided to start Polymath Crust, we realized that it's going to be a big stretch, but being ambitious, and maybe we didn't think hard enough. It was really tough running 2 stores. They were located 2 minutes walking away distance. So we thought, no problem, 2 minutes. If they needed help to that side, I can just walk over and problem will be solved. But we also forgot we are going to straddle 2 units, 2 rents. Turned out it was a very, very stressful period for us. 2 stores was crazy. We are paying rent, such a huge amount of rent every month that we just had to figure out what else to sell, what more things to sell, what more new stationery to make in a sense, and how to pull in more customers. We did the usual thing, which is to do more events, more readings, more exhibitions on that sort. Eventually, this would be in 2009 October, we actually got let off the hook. The Ann Siang unit, the landlord over there, who were renting out to both Front Row Boutique on the upstairs and us on the downstairs, they decided to double up the rent over there. So instead of 7,000, they were looking at 14,000. So we said, me and Karen was, 14,000 might be manageable, might be. And of course, the fact that, everybody knows, these 2 kids opened 2 bookstores. Then at the back of our minds was this ego there, If we suddenly close up the Ann Siang unit, it would make us look, funny. We just have 2 stores and now we are back to 1 store. But we did the calculations, we did the amount of space that we had at this unit. We realized that we can easily push whatever books we have at Ann Siang into this unit, because this one we have all 3 stories. And we still have a lot of leftover space after that. So less than 3 days after they proposed the new rent scheme at Ann Siang, we said bye-bye to the landlord, and we made decision to move everything to 86 Club Street, where we are now. So, in a sense, it's a lesson learned. We were thankful that we didn't let our ego get ahead of us, where it will look embarrassing, where you had 2 stores, then suddenly now you have 1 store, Then that question always came to mind, would people think of us in a funny way, Obviously they couldn't manage it, but it's true, we couldn't manage it. It's too difficult in that sense, back then.
Yeah, there was actually a reason why we wanted to have BooksActually separate from Polymath and Crust. It's because for BooksActually we established ourselves as literary
place or literature for...
Yeah, we specialize in literature, basically. And at the same time, we wanted to bring in non-fiction books, but we didn't feel that it would be wise for us to combine both non-fiction and fiction together in one store, because that would just dilute our brand. And we didn't want to become like a miniature version of a mega bookstore, which is like a mini Borders, for example, where you just squeeze everything in one store. So we wanted a specialization as well for non-fiction. So for the non-fiction store, Polymath and Crust, we brought in titles that we felt that the other bookstores were not featuring. Obviously, we had genres like history, philosophy, travel, food, aesthetics, and human sciences, which included philosophy and psychology and sociology. But there were a lot of books out there that were too technical, or they were how-to books, like self-improvement books and stuff like that. And
Dummies.
And yeah, dummies.
The Dummy series.
So we wanted to bring in something that was readable to the general audience, at the same time increase their appetites as well, which is where the name Polymath came about. Polymath is basically someone who is well versed in all sorts of subjects, math, science, literature, the arts, and
Crust. Okay, Polymath is someone that is like Leonardo da Vinci, where he knows architecture, he knows design, he knows literature. He is a Renaissance man. That's how a polymath is described. He's well versed in almost every field that he's good at, in a sense. So it's like the high-end jack of all trades, in a sense. So we thought, non-fiction, good. We came and named Polymath. Well, okay, perfect. We thought Polymath felt a bit flat, very, very flat. So I said, could we have Polymath and we like the ampersand and, but we couldn't come up with a second word for a long, long time. It took us 2 weeks, I think. So we're just sitting there, and because both of us we do like natural sciences a lot, say geography, Animal Planet, National Geographic, so that sort of stuff. So we thought, why don't we call it Crust? The earth crust. So it ended up become Polymath and Crust. The name is still there. The signboard is still there, even though BooksActually is there. We are just too lazy to change the signboard, but it's still there.
So the goal for having the non-fiction store is to sort of make everyone a polymath in that sense, where you'll be exposed to different sorts of subjects and genres, but at a very readable pace. So it's accessible to everyone, which is what we're trying to do for BooksActually as well. Like, we don't want to just restrict people to reading the
usual suspects.
Yeah, the heavy stuff, but everything, people can actually read everything else as well.
Yep, so that's the rundown of what the bookstore is now today.
This is how it looks like
This is
right
what it looks like inside, yeah. This is entrepreneurial talk, so I should talk a bit about what makes us entrepreneuring. We sort of figured that along the way, there are at least 3 general areas that has always kept us going and kept us growing at the same time. I might diverge a bit along the way, but it's these 3 areas. One is endurance. Second is challenges, and the third one is self-belief. I'll start endurance, and hopefully I don't veer too far away. Endurance is basically just physical and mental endurance. At this stage now, we are at our fifth year, 3 months, around there. Technically, Karen and I still work 7 days a week. We have not had a holiday for, that same amount of time that since we started BooksActually. We have not had a single holiday. But that's by choice. There's a good part of us, which is a good thing and a positive thing. We actually don't see it as work. We don't see it, we wake up at 9, 10 in the morning, you finish work at 11 at night, then that's work. It's like going to office and getting out of the store. In a sense, no. We see it as part of our lives. Everywhere we go, everything that we do, we see it as doing it something for the bookstore, because it's so much part of our lives. When you enter the bookstore, when you see the whole surroundings, especially at the back area of where our desk is, the shelves at the back is very messy, but it contains a lot of our own personal belongings, whether it's our books that we collect, or if you look at the shelves on the side, you'll see a lot of her camera collections. And you go up the stairway, you see the typewriter collections that we have. So basically, the bookstore, it's really our life in a sense. We don't just see it as work anymore. So to put in 7 days a week, to not go with a holiday in a sense, it's more easily bearable in a sense. Of course, there are moments where we are tired. We are definitely tired most of the time. A couple of individuals here who comes to the bookstore, whenever they ask me, how am I doing? And I say, oh, tired. Yep, same, tired. But it's something that we believe that if you want to start something, you got to put in time. You don't put in time, you don't put in the effort. It's not just work smart, versus work hard. You got to have both. If you don't have both, it's not going to come out what you want it to be. Famous writer Malcolm Gladwell, can't remember which book, but it's the later ones. He had this theory that he put forth. He had these two violin prodigies, 4 to 5 years old. You look at them and they're talented in the violin. 2 grows up, teenage years, at 12, both still have the same amount of talent in a sense. They are slated to be violin prodigies in a sense. But one practices 8 hours a day. The other one, because he's reaching his teenage years, so a lot of distraction, he practices 2 hours a day. Then as they grow up, they reach adulthood. One of them is a violin teacher in the high school of his town. The other one, it's a worldwide well-known violin player. Both of them have the same amount of talent, but it all boiled down to the number of hours that they put in while they were growing up. So for Malcolm Gladwell, his theory was that to be good at something, you've got to put in the hours. If you don't put in hours, it's not going to bear fruit in a sense. We see that as one of the more important aspects of us, how we run the bookstore.
Also, running a bookstore is a lifelong thing for us. This is not something we intend to set up and dismantle after maybe 5 years or 10 years, but this is something we intend to grow, and hopefully it will have a life of its own and leave a legacy for future generations. And it's not something where we set up and then we say, okay, maybe if this doesn't work out, we'll just go back to our day jobs. We don't have day jobs. This is our life, basically. And this is something that I suppose important to people who want to set up their own businesses. You shouldn't just try something and give up after it fails or after a period of time.
So that part is endurance, whether it's physical or mental endurance, you got to stick at it. As long as you tell yourself that, if I don't do this, there's nothing else I could do. Whether you have a university degree, you have a PhD, as long as you're going to do the business, you tell yourself, who cares about a PhD? There's no backup for me. If I'm going to start this, I'll run this. And generally, if you hold it at thought, you put in the hours, you put in the effort, you work smart, something good will come out. Someone will notice what you have done along the way, and someone will definitely appreciate it at the same time. So there's endurance. Then the second one, challenges. Challenges is basically where we generally we actually take on challenges. We take on a lot of challenges. It doesn't allow us to be complacent. It doesn't allow us to stagnate at the same time. When I say challenges, it could be from trying to open up the second store for Polymath Crust, when we were only such a young business in that sense, to say if a bestseller, say one particular title. If I were to compare bookstore to our smaller bookstore, and I compare it to Kinokuniya, Christmas just passed, so book sales is generally always very high. So the distributors, the suppliers would usually come to you and, Christmas is coming, these are the few hot titles that will sell like crazy when they pick up the amount. So generally after this few years of running a bookstore, we do know what sells and what doesn't sell in a sense. So there was this one particular title. It has a very touristy name to it, but it's very well done. It's called Singapore Shop House. So when I saw a supplier and okay, you give me, 70 copies. Then I said, you're kidding. You're actually bringing in more than what Kino is going to bring in. I say, no problem. I'll be able to sell it. And of course, it's proven that we managed to sell almost everything. And Kino lost to us. So yeah. But it's that sort of challenge that we crave in that sense, where we know that it will make sure that we don't get boring in that sense in our own work. It also allows us to enjoy our work in that sense. We always, every year during Christmas, we have quite a lot of book launches, people who want to use the venues for exhibitions, so on and so forth. Every year, including this year, I'm sure it will happen again, we swear off doing so many events in 1 week. For the whole month of December, at just 1 week alone, we can have at least one exhibition and 4 different events going on in that same week. And we always try to swear off not doing that because it's crazy, it's not possible to handle. But every year we end up doing it. Because it's something that, people come to you and you see that the book, it's a good book, and you should launch it in a bookstore. And the person had written a book and just so happened that it's going to be launched in December. The book is out in December. You can't tell a person, no, it's so busy, you can't launch it, please wait until next month or the month after. So we better take it on. And yeah, we try not to do it in December, but it always comes back to haunt us. We always do the craziest things in terms of workload. Besides taking up the talk for tonight, 3 days ago, we were actually doing a book fair over at NUS, which took up a lot of time from our side and effort at the same time. And that's on top of running the bookstore from 11 to 9 every day. So in a sense, we're always looking, not to fill up our schedule or fill up our work day in a sense, but we are always looking for different things to take on. We have taken on this publication. We got to know of this publication through 3 very talented young undergrads, 1 from NUS and 2 from NTU. One of them standing behind there. It's not a serif. It's for sale at the counter there, $10 each. It's basically a quarterly literary journal that publishes writers that has never been published before. Basically, it's anybody here. You can basically submit whether it's a photo essay, a poem, a short story, or anything that is literary. You can submit to the editors via the email, and they will take it from there. And if it's good enough, it will eventually be published in the next issue, in that sense. So when they came up with issue 0, which is also out, they asked whether could they have the launch at the store, and of course we would be glad to have the launch at the bookstore. Immediately after seeing the book and after the launch, both Karen and I approached the editors would they be keen if they remain as the editors, but we step in as the publisher? We do have a very fledgling young press called Math Paper Press, where we try to publish local writers, but we did heavily believe, and we do heavily believe in serif in that sense. And when it came under us, it was this one, issue 1. It did very well. It broke even very fast. In less than 3 months, we did 1,000 copies. So we managed to break even in 3 months, which was considered quite a record for local publishing. Of course, to be honest, because it was retailing at $10, so it's something that it's easily picked up at the same time by a consumer from that perspective. Serif issue 2 got published 2 weeks back. We're glad to announce that as of yesterday, we broke even for this issue already. So it took us less than 2 weeks in that sense. It's that sort of challenge in that sense where we always pick up more than we can take on in terms of work, you know. So it becomes like a challenge day in, day out. We don't, as long as the challenge does add to the bottom line, we do take a very more realistic and capitalistic way of saying it. If the particular venture that we're going to do, whether it's publishing, exhibition, or anything that we take on the challenge, it got to have some form of contribution to the bottom line. It got to make sure that I don't make a huge loss, or at least I try not to make a loss out of it.
We have to make sure that we don't fall, so that the people who are depending on us will not fall either. So in this sense, we do believe a lot in the publication serif, where young emerging writers can actually contribute. Basically, you can be anyone and contribute, and you don't have to be someone who has won awards or you have been published somewhere else. It's basically open to everyone. And we also do things like
Singapore Writers Fest. Okay, the other challenge that we took up was actually Singapore Writers Fest last year. Last year? No, wait.
2009.
2009. Singapore Writers Fest, as usual, they always ask for an official bookstore. So, they did it on a biannual basis. So the previous bookstores, they had Page One, I think they had Kino also, if I don't remember wrongly. But each year, there was hiccups along the way as regards to how the bookstores brought the books in that sense. Singapore Writers Fest, you have overseas writers coming in, you know, and of course, the logical thing is that if the overseas writer come into, to this Writers Fest, you've got to make sure that his or her book is available at the bookstore. If not, then what's the point? You know, so of course, from previous experience, some of the bookstores didn't fulfill the criteria. 2009 October was the Singapore Writers Fest. We were approached in March 2009. So roughly we had half a year to work on it. We agreed to being the official bookstore, but we knew that it's something that it's actually not beyond our resources and not beyond, it's actually beyond our resources and beyond our capacity and beyond our staff strength and beyond both of us to actually do it in a sense at that point in March. But then we figured out that, okay, fine, we had 6 months to prepare, you know, and work involved, the most basic thing, we got to make sure that almost every single writer that is coming, we got to have his or her book appear at the bookstore. And because Singapore Writers Fest, they do sell it as the 4 languages, in a sense. So we have, which we are good at, English books, no problem, but we got to bring in the Chinese titles, Malay titles, and Tamil titles, which is generally not what we are good at in a sense, you know. But we had 6 months to work on it, and I'm glad to say that we fulfilled close to the assessment that came out, the whole so-called assessment that came out after that from both National Arts Council and the Writers Fest Committee. We fulfilled close to 98% of what the authors we expect to bring in. So we felt quite happy, of course. was a crazy 9 days. It was a 9 days where we had to create, where the art, because it was held at the Arts House main gallery, we were expected to set up a bookstore in the gallery space. So it's up to you how you want to set a bookstore. I mean, we didn't go with shelves since it's the most logical thing, which means we need to ask our contractor to come in and do the shelves, set up everything, look like a bookstore, so they can come in for 9 days to a bookstore. Then after 9 days, everything gets teared down. So it was crazy, but we did it. So this year is Writers' Fest again. I'm not sure will we do it, but if they invite us, I'm sure there's a high chance we will do it. But it was a crazy 9 days that we went through. So this is one of the challenges that we took up in 2009. Okay, so I got past endurance and challenge. How much time now? Okay, time is good. Okay, let me go with one more challenge that we took up late last year. The brand there that you see, OLT, is actually this French high-end Parisian fashion brand. It's called Olympia Le Ton. It's basically this range of clutch bags. Yes, clutch bags. We actually sell clutch bags. But they are designed like books, which when first saw it, they fell in love with it.
Yeah, because it's hand embroidered and it's modeled after first edition covers of famous books. Like you can see Catcher in the Rye,
Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, Tennessee Williams, Streetcar Named Desire. There's Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. And
she usually, it's this particular designer, which is her namesake, Olympia Le Ton. She would get everything hand stitched, and after that, she would get this Parisian box maker. He's a bookbinder and a box maker at the same time, and he would do the binding for her. So it's this little handy clutch bag, so that as though you're holding a book, but it's a clutch bag in that sense. The challenge actually came out from the price tag. The challenge was not in contacting her because everybody's contacted my email, so we thought, oh, why not? We just send an email and say that we are keen to carry it, and we didn't expect a reply, but they did send a reply and said that they'll be more than happy to have the bookstore carry it. So, of course, we rejoiced. We are so happy. But that's before we opened a PDF document where we saw the order form and we saw the retail price. The small one, the Catcher in the Rye, it's going
at 1,008.
Recommended retail price, 1,008. And the normal clutch size bags was going for 2,001. So when we saw the amount, we were like, whoa, that's the reason why you're from France, huh? If it's Singapore, But then when you mentally calculate the sums where the percentage that she's going to give it to you, you realize that, whoa, there's a lot of money that we're going to dump in. Are we able to handle that end of last year? Because this was going to happen we got the order form in September, I guess, August or September. So we decided that if the product comes in, it will come in roughly in October, but it's also very close to Christmas. And being Christmas, as Christmas is, we got to prepare for more retail sales, which means we got to bring more books. So if we attempt to bring this one in, we'll clash with our buying budget for Christmas in the first place.
At the same time, I suppose we wanted to penetrate the fashion industry as well. First and foremost, we're a bookstore, but we felt that this was a very good mix for us. And we actually had an exhibition of these bags. We did a 2-week exhibition at Armenian Street, where we set up a small retail space. And we did this within 3 days. We actually brought in the bricks and manually assembled this particular table that you're looking at right now.
The glasses there, those are fish tanks. So it's just inverted. So it was nothing very fancy, but it fitted what we wanted in that sense. We built this, because both the bookstores and the one at Orchard Scene Leisure uses a lot of wine crates. If you go to the bookstore and you see it. So we formed this giant letter O, L, and T to make the shelving there, to make the exhibition space. When we decided to so-called take up the challenge of bring in the bags, after calculating the amount of money that we can spare, we ordered, I think, nine pieces altogether. Then we realized that so high-end, you know, do I want to have the launch, the party, the exhibition at the bookstore itself, or should we try to do it at a separate venue? So of course, when you say separate venue, the cost comes up again. You know, luckily, we managed to get space sponsored. This particular unit is actually right across where the Peranakan Museum is and where the substation is. Through the few years of running a bookstore, we got to know of people, we got to know of friends, and it so happened that this was a very new commercial property that they have just so-called revamped. So they also wanted so-called new and exciting things to be held at the space before they ran it out, in a sense, to have that sort of vibrancy within the area. So we scored 2 weeks rent-free, but there's no fairy tale ending. We didn't sell any one of the single clutch bags. So technically, I had made a loss, in a sense. But to make ourselves feel better, we have always thought of it along the other lines. This range of bags, it looks perfect in the bookstore. It will only look well in a bookstore because you're talking about book covers. They are first edition book covers that she had drew her inspiration from. It's the actual book cover. If you own the first edition book, you compare it to the clutch bag, one for one, it looks so similar. It's the same, you know, and it will look perfect inside Kinokuniya, Borders, any of the bookstores, you know, and realize that, but this is also a fashion item. There's always a high chance that any of the fashion outlets like Club 21, you know, or any of the independents like Front Row, they could easily bring it in too, because it is a fashion item to begin with. And we decided that we do not want that to happen. We felt that no matter how much the cost was, which was still manageable, I guess, we needed to have the clutch bags and to be the first retailer to retail it. So at least we get the first blood at the whole thing. So yeah, that's the important part of it, that nobody can say that, oh, we brought it in first, you know, in a sense. As a small retailer, it's always good to be the first to bring in a sense. Yeah. So we made a loss, but we're the first one to bring in. I hope that makes us feel better. So that's a challenge for OLT. The last one is the simplest one. You do not need to spend money on it. Oh wait, do you want me to talk about Birds and Co? Okay, the last area, I shall stop for a bit and I shall go to Birds and Company. I still have time, do I? Okay. Birds and Company is actually our stationery in-house brand. Ever since the very first day we set up BooksActually, we have always liked stationery, notebooks, pencils, anything that is stationery. Generally, we do collect them in that sense. We realized that we see a market for it at the same time. So we come out with this product range that is under the Birds and Company brand, which is ours. So under this brand, we actually make notebooks like this, and notebooks again, and notebooks again. Yeah, we have a lot of notebooks.
For all of our notebooks, we actually try to sneak in some sort of literary element into it, because we realized that the people who came into our bookstores, not everyone loves reading, sadly, but some
it's
people
not a bad
might.
Thing, but yeah.
Some people come in for our stationery, some people come in for the ambience or our vintage collection. So we found that, we thought that it would be great if somebody walks out of the bookstore with a notebook, and it sort of educates him a little. For our handmade stationery, for this one, this is called the Majulania Cahier. Everything is hand-stitched and hand-typed with a typewriter, so there's a lot of craft work going on behind that. At the same time, we also selected quotes from famous writers and thinkers, philosophers, politicians, and we put them on the covers. So you can actually buy a notebook if you really love the quote, and at the back we credited the author or the person where it came from. So maybe you're someone who really loves this and you buy 10 back and you give this out to your friends, and all of your friends might not have heard of, say Jerome K. Jerome, which is the title over here. But he likes the quote, and maybe he'll go back and do a Google search, and he'll find that, hey, maybe I might be interested in reading this book, wherever this came from. So he might go to the library, he might go to Borders, Kinokuniya, or even our bookstore and pick up the book. And that sort of encourages reading. And
in the best case scenario, I hope the customers come back to BooksActually and find the book from me and buy the book from me, but it doesn't happen all that time.
Yeah, it's kind of nerdy in that way, but we just want to spread the love of reading.
Yeah, I mean, almost every single thing, almost all the stationery products that we do, we try to have some sort of literary element to it, whether it's from a fiction point of view or non-fiction point of view. As Karen was saying, we hope that to bring home this particular stationery product, whether it's pencils that we sell which has authors' names on it, we hope that it will make you want to check out more about the writer or the particular non-fiction personality, and in a sense it helps to spread the love of reading. You know, it helps to spread that.
Yeah. It piques your curiosity, basically.
Piques your curiosity, yeah.
And yeah, this other series that we did is called the Tea Bush Notebook. Basically, everybody's familiar with tea, but not everybody knows that it comes from one particular plant, which is the tea plant, the Camellia sinensis plant. So we actually did some sort of research behind the plant, and we typed the story of the tea plant at the back of the notebook, so that when you go home with this notebook, you can actually find out more about tea if you're a tea lover. Or if you just love the picture, you might also find out something more about tea. And we did this for a particular animal species as well, the red fox and the brush rabbit. So these are things that we like, and this obviously comes from our love of geography and science and the natural history.
Animal Planet, yeah.
Yeah.
But our Birds and Company has, of course, evolved along the way. We